Good morning, everyone. So now we're starting with Rsk4803. And for housekeeping, for those who are joining us just now for the first time, we are looking at study unit 2.2 to 2.6. So those are the study units that are going to be looking at today. That's our agenda of the things that we need to make sure that we cover today as well. So we're going to be looking at study unit 2.2 to 2.6. And the previous two classes that we've already had, we covered unit 1.1 all the way through to 2.1 as well. Now, for those who are joining us today and those who are on the free class, free trial package as well, please note that our free trial period is officially ending today. So make sure that by Monday, end of day, if you're interested in joining our classes, you would have already officially registered, because by Monday, end of day, that's when we're going to be cutting off the free trial package that is available. We're going to be cutting off access to the website. For those students who have not yet registered, we're going to be cutting off access to the website by Monday, end of day. And today is our third, which is also our last free class that we're offering as well. So please, if you're interested in joining us, please make sure that you register, and make sure that you register by Monday, end of day. Also, when it comes to the assignments, I see that on the schedule for the assignments, assignment number 1 is due on the. So when it comes to the schedule for the assignments, assignment number 1 is due on. Let me just give me a second to check on my schedule. Assignment number 1 is due on the 25th of May. That's when assignment number 1 is due. So what we're going to do is from next week onwards, with those students who have already registered, we're going to be making announcements on exactly what the approach is going to be for the different assignment. Because I see that here, assignment number 1, assignment number 2, and assignment number 4 are quizzes. Then assignment number 3 is a written assignment. So we're going to be, so for all these assignments, we have different approaches that we use for these assignments as well. So please make sure that if you're interested in joining us, you would have registered by Monday, end of day, because from next week onwards, we're going to be announcing on exactly how we're going to be assisting with regards to the assignments as well. So that by end of this month, we should be done with assignment number 1, because what we always do is we always make sure that exactly a month before the assignment is due, we would have already looked at the assignment and also polished up on the assignment as well, so that if there's anything that you want to check on your own and follow up and review as well, you have exactly a month to actually review that particular assignment as well. So that's basically how our approach is going to be with regards to the assignment. So in the previous classes, we covered unit 1.1 to unit 2.1, as I've stated as well. So today, please note that our agenda today is unit 2.2 to unit 2.6 as well. So I think I did make an announcement as well for those students who are even on the trial package, that please make sure that you create a user account on the website, because on that user account, you were able to access the study units, as the articles to the study units. We did give the articles to the study units, so that when you're going through the material, as we go through the material in the book as well, you should be able to refer to say, okay, this is what is covered. Although when we go through the articles as well, we do project the articles on the screen so that you can see exactly what we're going through as well. So that's going to be our approach when it comes to the assignments. So which means that I see here you have 4 assignments and 3 of them are quizzes. So which means that from next week onwards, we are going to be starting to looking at assignments. But remember, we assist students with assignments for those students who have already officially registered with us. And yeah, so that's basically how we look at assignments as well. So please make sure that you communicate with us if you're interested in joining us. And remember, for those students that we have communicated with, you are free to make your decision. And we have already, I think we did share for those students who did inquiries as well, we did share YouTube links because the assignments that we do for those free classes, we make them publicly available to everyone as well. And we use the YouTube platform. And so which means we did send you the links also that you're able to access the videos of the classes that we have done already, so that you make up your mind whether the way that we approach the different study units would work for you as well, so that you make a decision. So even today's class as well, we are going to make it publicly available, but this is the last class that we're making publicly available. From going into the future, our videos are going to be uh, um, um, uh, available to students who are uh, our, vi- our videos are going to be available to those students who would have registered as well. All right. So today we are going to be looking at Unit 2.2. Please, when you attend the classes, please make sure that where you are seated, you have a good network connection, because if you have a bad network connection, you are going to struggle to hear us on our end. The video might be a bit blurry and also as well, and you are going to struggle to hear from us as well. So on our side, we have a secondary device that we use to make sure that our connection is going okay as well. So we do have a secondary device that we use as a review to make sure that our connection is going as planned as well. So please, when you're attending the classes, make sure that where you are seated, you have a good network connection. Because if you don't have a good network connection, you are going to struggle to hear us. Sometimes you can hear us with a bit of a drag as well. It's mainly because sometimes you might be having a bad network connection. Although, if there's anything that you miss, all our sessions are recorded, which means that we make sure that we make those videos available to you as well as soon as possible. So now we are going to be looking at Unit 2.2. So just to do a quick recap of what we've covered so far, you'll see that study unit 1, the main thing that you need to pick up from study unit 1 is, if you recall study unit 1, you'll see that when you now look at these study units, right? From study unit 1 to study unit 9, it's a build up of you being introduced to risk financing. That's basically what you need to take note of when you look at the way that the lecturer basically formulated these study units. When you look at study unit 1 to study unit 9, it's basically a build up for you to being introduced to risk financing. So study unit 1, there are three main things that you need to take note of when you look at study unit 1. The first thing is you are being introduced to study unit 1.1 to unit 1.4. They are giving you case studies so that you can see exactly where you are starting the argument to say, when you look at the historical disasters, are we going to be blaming risk financing, or is it going to be an issue where we are going to be blaming something else? Because please make sure that where you're seated, you have a good network connection, because right now I'm projecting onto the articles as well. I'm projecting onto the articles. So please make sure that where you are seated, you have a good network connection so that you're able to see what we are projecting now. Because if you have a bad network connection, you are going to struggle for your device to actually be able to process what we are projecting as well. So please make sure that you have a good network connection where you are seated as well, so that you are able to see what we are sharing as well. So as I was saying, from study unit 1 to 1.4, you are given articles which are indicating exactly where we are saying, if you look at these historical disasters, the question now becomes, are you going to say this was a risk management failure, or there is other failures that contributed to these disasters other than what? Risk management failures. So they give you those different case studies just for you to be able to start asking yourself on exactly, so how, based on this, are we going to blame risk management and say in these cases risk management failed, or are we going to be blaming something else? Then the most important study unit from there is unit 1.5, because unit 1.5, they give you that case study of LTCM, but when they give you that case study of LTCM, the case study itself is not that important, because they're using that case study to demonstrate the point that they are now giving after that case study as well. Because in that article, that's when they look at LTCM and they refer to LTCM, they now start asking the question to say, so what really is the role of the risk management function? So what is the role of risk management function? And remember, they say in study unit 1.5, when you look at the role of the risk management function, is to identify the risk, is to quantify the risk, and then after they identify the risk and then they quantify the risk, they need to now be able to present these risk exposures to the different to the board and top management. So they need to look at they need to now present the risk exposures to the board and top management. Then after the risk managers after the risk managers present these risk exposures to the board and top management, remember they've identified, so they need to make sure that they clearly communicate what are the risk exposures that have been identified. And if there's any quantification of these risk exposures, they need to also indicate exactly what are the quantifications of these risk exposures as well, right? Now, remember, generally speaking, we can say risk can be given as conservative, moderate, or high risk exposures. Sometimes they even give it as in unitary terms, where they can say a risk exposure of 1 up to 10, or 0 up to 100%, and all those other things as well. So there are different unitary measures that they can use, right? So that the board and top management fully understands exactly what are the potential risk exposures that they are taking, that they will be taking when it comes to the risk that has been identified. Now, based on that, it is not the role of the risk management function to now make a decision on exactly how much risk should we be taking. That's not the role of the risk management function. The role so that role falls now in the hands of the board and top management, because based on the risk and return constraints, so based on the risk and return constraints, because remember, there's always going to be a need for a balance between risk and return, because we know that when you now look at when you look at under normal circumstances, when risk increases, when you're expecting a higher, when you increase your expected return to be a higher expected return, you also expect your risk exposure to be increasing as well. So the higher the risk that you're taking, the higher the expected return that you also ideally expect as well. So based on the risk return relationship, and also looking at that and based on the risk appetite of the board and top management, right? Because they are the ones who are now looking at the organization from a macro perspective. So based on that as well, that's when they can now say, based on what we're seeing, this is how much risk we are going to be prepared to take. Then after that decision is made, it is now goes back to the risk management function to ensure that there is monitoring and review of those risk exposures, to ensure that all the activities of the organization fall within the fall within the intended risk limits. So whatever activity does the organization, the risk management function needs to make sure that all these exposures fall within the intended risk limits as well. And because of that, you see that the main theme in study unit 2 takes us back to say, so if we are saying that these our activities should be falling within the risk limits that we have been set by the board and top management, how do we ensure that we have a risk culture that where everybody fully understands exactly how much is the risk limit that we be falling under in all the activities that we do? That's why they say when you're now going to be introduced to enterprise risk management, which is study unit 2, is building onto that, we're now saying the risk management function should not be seen as a separate silo that is operating on its own, where, for example, before we start a project, we just say we have a checklist and we say, we put a tick to say, if we complied, are we compliant currently with this? Are we compliant with this? Are we compliant with that? Are we compliant with that? Then if we say, yes, we have ticked all the boxes, we forget about the risk management function, we now concentrate on the project. So you see that way, the risk management function is being treated in silo, which historically it has been done or it has been practiced by other organizations, but they are saying we should look at it from an enterprise risk management function, where we are saying that on an ongoing basis, the risk management function should work hand in hand with all the other functions within the organizations to ensure that any activities of the organizations on an ongoing basis are falling within the risk limits that has been set by the board and top management. So which means the risk management function has to work hand in hand with the finance department, the manufacturing department, the operational department, the marketing department, and all other functions within an organization. So which means in that case, the risk management function becomes integrated within the different functions of the organizations. And that's what we're trying to look at when you look at enterprise risk management. So going back to unit 1.6, that's why you see that now that we understand what the risk management function should be, now the question now goes back to say, so when do we say risk management has failed? And remember, they give us those 5 points which we need to look out for us to say, if these 5 points are triggered, then we can say the risk management function has been, there is a risk management failure. So please, in unit 1.5, Make sure that you understand the functions and the responsibilities of the risk management function of the board and top management and what risk management is. And over and above that, in Unit 1.5, make sure you understand those 5 risk management failures. So please make sure that you're able to understand, identify, and explain those 5 risk management failures. And because of this, how they can potentially ask you questions in the exam, as I've given you when we covered Unit 1.5, I also gave you an example I referred to an example question or in the exam where they were asking about the risk management failures, where typically what they can do, historically, they have asked you to state and discuss the 5 risk management failures, right? But what they can also do is they can give you a case study, and based on that case study, they can ask you to say, based on this case study, can you identify the risk management failures relevant to this particular case study as well? And then they can also ask you, how can these risk management failures be mitigated as well, right? So those are the potential exam questions that they can ask you coming from Unit 1.5. And because of this, that's the reason why we didn't really dwell too much time on Unit 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. Because if they are going to be asking you, giving you a case study, they need to give you that case study in the exam. And after they give you that case study, and then they can say, based on this case study, identify and discuss the risk management failures relevant to this particular case study. And you should be able to discuss that. Also, which means if they give you as a case study, they need to give you that particular case study. Now, after 1.5, we also saw that because of globalization, the board and the top management of the organization, they are constantly being bombarded by a lot of information that is coming, a lot of new information coming in, and information that is also changing as well because of globalization, where most organizations are no longer just operating based on risk factors relevant to a small area that they're operating in. They have to take into account the risk factors emanating from the different, from across the globe as well. As we have seen, if you look at in recently as well, when you look at the war between Iran and US and Israel as well, you will see that, yes, you can say South Africa is very far from Israel, or you can say South Africa is very far from from America, or very far from Iran. But what do we see? Whatever is happening there is going to affect us here in South Africa. And how does it affect us? We see that already because of that war and the retaliation that have happened as well. They are now choking the Strait of Hormuz. And because of this, global trade is also being chopped. We see that they are talking about a huge supply of fertilizer supposed to be flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of world supply of oil is coming from the Strait of Hormuz as well, which means that what do we see happening now? We see that the prices of diesel and petrol have gone up. And we know that in many businesses, diesel and petrol play a very, very vital role or important role when it comes to the cost of the organizations. They are usually the major cost drivers, especially when you look at logistics company. Now, when your fuel goes up by 5 rand, and in South Africa, you are a bit lucky because the government did tax some of the absorb some of the increase in price by about 3 rand as well. But in other countries, they directly just moved or basically directed all that cost to the normal consumers as well. And which means because of this, what do we see? The price of diesel and petrol has gone up, which also means that your cost of doing business has also gone up. Even though you are in South Africa, you are supplying, your customers are in South Africa, but because of the issue of diesel and petrol, what do we see? It has gone up. And we know that diesel and petrol forms a very big cost in many other, in supply chains as well, which means that you would also expect a ripple effect where there's also going to be an increase in price of some other goods and services as well because of the increase in what? Diesel and petrol. So which means because of this, what do we see? We are saying that when we go back to the acronym of VUCA, we're saying that we are operating in a volatile world where there's uncertainty, in a volatile world, in an uncertain world, where in a complex world, and also where there's a lot of ambiguity as well. And because of this, what do we see? Managers are constantly being bombarded by all these information that they have to make decision on as well. So which means, how do managers now manage to make decisions based on what we are seeing, where because of globalization, whatever is happening across the world is affecting us as well. And because of this is the reason why you see that so which means that if ever they give you a question in the exam regarding the acronym VUCA, it means that potentially they can ask you to state and discuss the acronym VUCA, or they can give you a case study, and based on the case study, then they can say, based on this case study, which of these is relevant in the acronym VUCA? Is it a volatile situation? Is it a situation of that is where there's uncertainty? Is it a situation where there's complexity, or is it a situation where there's ambiguity? So which means that you should be able to identify based on the case study to say, so which of these is relevant? And then they can also say, how can you mitigate it as well? And if you still remember from unit 2.1.6, we said that if you check in the article, they gave us how to identify, they give us that table which discusses exactly how to identify each of them and also how to mitigate them as well. So please make sure that you cover that, because the lecture loves to bring this as well in the assignments as well as in the exam, because it's becoming a very important concept going forward as well, because as you can see, over the past 7 years or so, because of globalization, advancements in IT, and all those other things as well, there's constant, the VUCA acronym is becoming more and more important for us to understand, especially when you look at the board and top management who are constantly making those decisions from a macro perspective as well. Now, on unit 2.1, we do look at wicked problems. And it's all going back to that issue of globalization, which is linked to unit 1.6 as well, where we are saying that because of globalization, what do we see? Traditionally, when you look at people who were running businesses traditionally, remember we said traditionally, if you look at what was happening about 50 years ago or so, we were not really that worried about what is happening globally. A person would open their small business there in a rural area. They were not worried about what is happening in America. America felt very far for them. Reason being, the effects were not that much felt compared to how we feel the effects currently now as well. Because currently now, you are, even though you might be operating in your own small environment as well, you see that traditionally we were faced with traditional problems where we are not our operations were not necessarily that much interacting with what is happening in the world out there. But now, when you look at making decisions and running operations now, we are constantly being bombarded by information and affected by variables that are coming from what is happening globally as well. And because of this, what do we know? We know that from a world perspective, globally as well, it's very difficult to have an understanding where everyone is in agreement. We see that quite a lot when it comes to the UN. Every time when a country convenes a meeting at the UN, what do we see? There's always going to be one or two countries that are exercising that their veto power, which means that basically no decisions are being made at the United Nations currently, even when they do convene. You've seen this quite a lot, even if you don't follow it as well. You can see that every time an issue is being sent to the UN, there's always going to be one or two countries that veto the decision making. And what do we see? At the end of the day, no unanimous decision is being made. Why is it like that? Because people are coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, with different values as well, and the people are seeing things from a different perspective. And because of this, what do we see? Because of this, there is no agreement on exactly what is the problem. Others are saying the problem is one, others are saying the problem is two, actually, others are saying problem is A, others are saying problem is B, others saying problem is C as well, and others are identifying a very different problem because people are coming from very diverse backgrounds. But at the same time, we are expected to operate as a global community. And because of this, because there's no agreement on exactly what the issue, what the identified problem would be, it means that there is going to be no agreement or unanimous agreement on exactly how to solve the problem. And there's not going to be a unanimous agreement as well on exactly what the identified solutions should be. And if the solution, and over time, some of the solutions are also changing by the time we think that we are now getting to dealing with the solution as well. So because of this never ending seeking of a solution that we are not necessarily able to find as well, what do we see? It means that these are the typical type of problems that we refer to as wicked problems. Because with these wicked problems, because there's no agreement on exactly what the identified problem is, and what the steps that should be followed in solving the problems, and what the outcome is as well. What do we see? This is the reason why you find that in some cases, whatever the solution would be is basically only going to be satisfying a small group of people or a different group of people, but not necessarily everyone as well. So that's what we covered when you look at wicked problems. So that's what we've covered so far when you look at study unit 1.1 to 2.1. So please note, from an exam perspective, unit 1.5, 1.6, and 2.1, because of what is happening currently around across the globe as well, and because of globalization, advancements, internet, when you look at the issue of AI as well, there is no these concepts are bound to continue being examined by the lecturer. Even when you look at the issue of VUCA as well, if you look at the GenFeb exam, it came. And when you look at the GenFeb exam, it came. Why? Because South Africa had just hosted the G20, and the lecturer was giving a case study based on what was discussed in the G20, and then ask you regarding the issue of FUCA as well, to see if you are understanding from an application perspective exactly how do we apply the concept of VUCA. So you will see that these concepts are unit 1.5, 1.6, 2.1. They are concepts which we should expect to encounter in the exam. Reason being, if you check in your exam as well, question number one is made up of short questions. So question number one is generally made up of short questions. In some cases, they can be 20 something or even 30 questions as well. So because of this, these concepts are likely to be examined quite a lot when it comes to question number one, which is short questions. But remember, these questions, they can also be asked as a long question, which can carry sometimes 10 marks or even 15 marks as well, because they can come in different ways. So are there any questions so far on the review of things that we've covered before we move on to unit 2.2? Any questions?
Rhinos?
Yes.
I have a question. It's not really related to what we were talking about, but I think it might affect some people at some stage. Yesterday, I tried to log into the site and then I got an error message saying you've reached the maximum number of active logins for this account. Please log out from another device to proceed, something like that. But then I wasn't connected to any other device. I only use my laptop to connect to the site. So what do we do when we get a situation like that in future?
All right. I've asked our IT guys to have a look at it to see what is happening. So expect a communication on Monday. By Monday end of day, expect a communication because expect a communication because they need to just reconfigure something because it's limiting the number because it's basically limiting the number of devices that you can use, and also make sure that whenever you log in, you always log out as well, because it might read the session as continuing after if you don't log out. So I've asked our IT guy to look at it. They said they're going to come back to me by Monday. So I expect your communication by Monday. Right? Is there any other question? All right. So looking at Unit 2.2, Unit 2.2 is building up to that concept that you have just been introduced now, to where we are saying we should not, when we now look at a risk management perspective, we should not treat risk management function as a tick box exercise, where we are saying before we do any project that we're doing, we do the tick box, we take it aside. Now we can concentrate on the core business. And we're saying the risk management function should be integrated with other functions. Why? Because we are saying the risk manager, remember, after they've presented the risk exposures to the board and top management, and after the board has made that decision to say, based on the organization's risk appetite, this is how, and the risk appetite is based on that what? Linkage between risk and return. This is how much risk we should be taking as an organization. Now, as a risk manager, you are now going to be mandated to say, with the ongoing activities of the organizations from the different departments, not just one department, from the different departments, the risk management function, to ensure that any activities that the organization undertakes or partakes are falling within the set risk limits that have been set by the board and top management, right? So this is where the monitoring and reviewing comes in. And because of the need for that, it means risk management is no longer just a tick box exercise. It's actually an ongoing exercise for the organization. And because of this, that's why you see that we are saying the risk management function should be integrated with other functions within the organization. And this is what they refer to as the what? Enterprise risk management function. So which means when you're looking at enterprise risk management, you're now looking at risk management not only in silo, but how it links with the other functions of the organization as well. Now, looking at this, so because of this, we see that when we go on to Unit 2.2, going forward as well, we are building on towards enterprise risk management. So whatever we're covering there, we are building on to say, so how does this link us to the concept of enterprise risk management? So Unit 2.2, they're saying understanding and managing complexity risk. Now, before we move on to this as well, there's something that I need to explain. Please make sure that before you look at the videos covering what we're doing now, I have shared that video to individuals, also to the different WhatsApp groups as well, a couple of times, right? please make sure that you go through the orientation video that we have posted. It's a video that we did, I think, in 2024 or 25. Please make sure that you go through that orientation video, because that orientation video is giving you a rundown of Study Unit 1 all the way through to Study Unit 23. So it's giving you a rundown of all these study units. Why? So which means that I'm explaining in detail how these study units are leading on to each other until we get to Study Unit 23. As I've said, from Unit 1 all the way through to Unit 9, we are being introduced to to risk financing, right? So we're being introduced to the concept of risk financing, where we are looking at the different facets which are related to risk financing. Then Study Unit 10 now gives us an overview of what we have of risk financing, right? So it gives us an overview of risk financing, where we're saying risk exposures can either be retained or they can be transferred, right? If they are retained, that's Unit 11. If they are transferred, that's Unit 15. Now, there is also that in between where the risk exposure can either partly retained and partly transferred. That's Unit 12, 13, and 14. That's where we are looking at some cases where risk is being retained and partially transferred as well. Then, so you'll see that there is going to be a linkage of all the study units that we've done. Then when you look at now study unit 20, we're now looking at it to say, we acknowledge in study unit 8 that the risk, whatever we see as the risk exposure now, is not enough. So how do we now look at the way we're now looking at what risk, managing the risk, where we are saying that how do we manage the risk, where we are looking at it from a perspective where we are saying that business interruption, how do we now manage the risk that is also, and the cost of the risk that is coming from our business being interrupted as well. So that's what we're looking at, study unit 20. And then the last study unit, we're now looking at what the linkage now between the financing of the business, where we're saying, how do we finance this risk, where we're saying that it's not enough to get money to finance these risk exposures by getting that money to say if there's a risk event, we're managing that risk exposure by getting that money either through the owners of the business or through insurance as well. And sometimes you'll find that the insurance company itself might be overexposed in such a way that if there's a catastrophic loss as well, they might not be in a position where they are able to meet the cost of those risks. And it's not enough to go the reinsurance route, because the insurance market itself might not have the capital to mitigate that. And when you look at examples of catastrophic events, we've seen it in South Africa, where there are those the issue of the flooding and the issue of the riots as well that happened in 2021. So because of this as well, how do we mitigate? How does the risk? How does those parties who are mitigating this risk or absorbing this risk through insurance, where else can they get money? And this is where we are now looking at the interaction between the insurance industry and the capital markets. So that's basically what we're being introduced in the last study unit, but we're going to get there. So the reason why I'm giving you this is because you need to understand exactly where are we going and where are we coming from when it comes to your curriculum. And it's very, very important that you go through the orientation video, right? Now, after that, now let's look at Unit 2.2. Remember we said Unit 2.2, we are building up towards understanding this concept that we need to ultimately move towards, which is enterprise risk management. Now, here they say they look at understanding and managing complexity risk. And when you look at the article, Understanding and Managing Complexity Risk, they say from this article, what we need to make sure that we take note of is we should be able to evaluate the statement, how complexity breeds fragility, and illustrate with examples from your own experience. And also, we should be able to understand, discuss the question, what really causes failures? And those are the two main important concepts that we need to make sure that we take note of from that particular article as well. Now, when you look at the article, for Unit 2.2, so when you look at the article, understanding and managing complexity risk, they say in March 2000, a fire struck a semiconductor plant in New Mexico, leaving Ericsson short of millions of chips that the Swedish telecom giant was counting on to launch a new mobile phone product. As a result, Ericsson was ultimately driven from the market, while its rival Nokia Corporation flourished. So Ericsson had failed to recognize the New Mexico plant as a bottleneck in a complex, interconnected global supply chain. So looking at this, we know historically, for those who still remember these events as well, we know that historically, if you still remember around the year 2000 as well, around that particular period, Nokia was dominating the cell phone market. And there was a lot of competition when it comes to Ericsson as well, where there was a lot of competition between Nokia and Ericsson as well, right? And when you look at that particular competition as well, over time, if you have noticed, the question becomes, how is it that Ericsson faded and Nokia dominated the market in the 2000s? So this is one of the reasons why you find that Ericsson faded and Nokia dominated the market. And if you still remember, during this period as well, or around that period as well, even after this event as well, you also see that Ericsson ended up also coming together with Sony to try to have a comeback as well. And it will be very interesting to see exactly. So how did Nokia eventually got it wrong, where the Nokia now ended up being left behind? If you still remember the trend here, you see that Nokia was using the Symbian platform, which is the platform which if you look at the phones like the 3310 and 5110 and all those other phones as well, they were using the Symbian platform. And over time as well, there was an introduction of Android, the Android platform, and other phone manufacturers started using the Android platform as well. And it will be very interesting to see exactly. Nokia was doing everything right, but because they didn't jump onto the Android platform early enough compared to the other phone manufacturers as well, Nokia ended up being left behind as well. And other phone manufacturers came in and dominated the market. It would be very interesting to see exactly how BlackBerry got lost behind when it comes to the different platforms that the companies were also using as well, and looking at this. So which means here they are saying, because when you look at the issue of the chips as well, when one plant got affected by a fire, and you see that both Nokia and Ericsson were getting their chips from that particular plant, but because Nokia had diversified its risk, where the moment they see that something was wrong, because they had diversified their supply of these chips as well, they were able to continue and introduce a new model way before Ericsson were able to now recover from that from that accident as well, because Ericsson was just relying on that particular plant that was making those chips as well. Because Nokia was able to diversify their supply chain, they were able to recover from this quicker than Ericsson, and this is how one of the reasons why Ericsson ended up being left behind as well. So in this article, they also say Ericsson is not the only company to suffer a catastrophe due in part to the complexity of its own systems. In February 1995, Barings Bank Britain's oldest merchant bank, went from strength and prestige to bankruptcy over a course of days. The failure was caused by the actions of a single trader, Nick Leeson, who was based in a small office in Singapore. Soon after Leeson's appointment as general manager of Bearing Singapore, Securities Singapore, um, he used a secret account to hide losses he sustained engaging in unauthorized trading of futures and options. The complexity of the Bearing system enabled Leeson to fool others into thinking that he was making money when in fact he was losing millions. After the January 1995 Kobe Japan earthquake, he had rocked the Asian financial markets. Leeson's accumulated losses, some 1.4 billion, became too enormous to hide, eventually leading to Bearing's collapse. So in the past, companies have tried to manage risk by focusing on potential threats outside the organization, like competitors, shifts in strategic landscape, natural disasters, and geopolitical events. They are generally less adept at detecting internal vulnerabilities that make breakdowns not just likely, but in many cases inevitable. So vulnerabilities enter organizations and other human designed systems as they grow more complex. Indeed, some systems are so complex that they defy a thorough understanding. In August 2006, a defective software program aboard a Malaysian Airlines jetliner flying from Perth, Australia to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, supplied incorrect data about the aircraft speed and acceleration. This confused the flight computers, which sent Boeing 777 on a 3,000-foot roller coaster ride. With more than 5 million lines of code, aircraft software programs have become too large and complex to be tested thoroughly and are fielded without any guarantee that they'll always work. So here they're saying complexity breeds fragility. So which means as an organization grows, you see that there's also a lot of fragility that you also start seeing as the organization grows as well. Now the question becomes, so how do you mitigate the risk because of the increasing complexity of the organization? So that's why you see that as an example in South Africa, it all goes back to the question of ESCOM, as in, should ESCOM stay the way it is, or should they rather break down ESCOM into different generating companies as well? And remember, into different companies as well. Remember, this discussion has been going on for a few years as well. So it's because ESCOM is one of the biggest companies in Africa, and because of that, as the company has grown that big as well, it has also grown complex. Now the question becomes, should they rather break it down into different components, or should it stay as it is as well? Because of what? As the organization grows, it becomes more and more complex as well. Now, they go on to say, legal codes and agreements have also become increasingly complicated, often resulting in loopholes that others can exploit. In the spring of 2006, Boston Scientific Corporation, a medical device manufacturer, acquired its rival, Guidant Corp, outbidding Johnson & Johnson in the process. So earlier, in order to gain rapid antitrust approval, Boston Scientific and J&J had both signed deals with pharmaceutical giant Abbott Laboratories in anticipation of Guidant acquisition. J&J was first to strike a conditional licensing deal with Abbott, but the agreement failed to include a non-compete clause, so Abbott was then able to help Boston Scientific, which it happily did. After Boston Scientific outbid J&J, it sold Guidant, lucrative stent business, to Abbott to alleviate regulators' monopoly concerns. Thus, by exploiting a weakness in a complex legal agreement, Abbott was able to claim the best part of Guidance business in return for its assistance in Boston Scientific. So, time is often an enemy, not only because of obsolescence and increasing wear and tear, but also, ironically, because of the human ability to adapt to untenable situations and resist change. So consider, for example, the information technology system of the US Airlines ComAir Inc. In 2004, after its acquisition by Delta Airlines Inc., ComAir was forced to shut its business for several days because of an overloaded legacy crew management system. The result, 3,900 cancelled or delayed flights, nearly 20,000 stranded passengers, and a loss of 20 million in operating costs and lost revenue. Not only had the system exceeded its capacity, it also suffered from the addition of layers and layers of applications. Yet, ComAir's IT department was reluctant to upgrade the system as users had grown used to it. To make matters worse, ComAir acquisition by Delta created additional complications. Tight constraints on capital expenditure and friction between ComAir employees and their new owners had eroded the IT department's commitment. So this combination of technological and organizational complexities created the perfect storm for an internal meltdown. So Unit 2.2 is referring us to those case studies that we have looked at so far. Remember the case study of Barings Bank, we did cover it in Unit 1. The case study of ComAir, it was covered in Unit 1. And even the example, when you look at issues of complexity as well, when you look at the example of ESCOM as well, it was covered in Unit 1 as well. So which means as the organization grows, and becomes complex as well, the increasing complexity of the organization also breeds fragility, in the sense that there is going to be some loophole that is going to be left in, and where other external parties can exploit, or which can also breed a situation where there's going to be failure within the whole system because of what? Because of the increased complexity of the organization as well as it grows. So now, remember, in the study guide, we were asked to address and evaluate the statement, how complexity breeds fragility, right? So which means, looking at this as well, in the next headline or the next section that we're going to be looking at, we're now looking at the concept of how complexity breeds fragility. And here they say, as companies increase the complexity of their systems, products, processes, technologies, organizational structures, contracts, and so on, they often fail to pay sufficient attention to the introduction and proliferation of loopholes and flaws. So as a result, many firms are continually making fixes, which then adds to the total cost of ownership and often creates new problems. One estimate is that 20 to 50% of all fixes to software bugs introduce new unknown problems. Moreover, backward compatibility in the software and other products might be desirable to consumers, but in fact creates the condition of brittleness. Vincent Wiffer, senior director at Semantic Security Response, has warned that making Microsoft Corp's new operating system, Vista, compatible with earlier versions of Windows creates vulnerabilities. And because of this, they say, to exonerate matters, the possibility of random failures rises as the number of combinations of things that can go wrong increases, and the opportunity for acts of malicious intent also goes up. So build new applications on top of legacy systems, and error creep in between the lines of code. So merge two companies and weaknesses sprout between the organizational boundaries. Build Byzantine corporate structures and processes, and obscure pockets are created where bad behavior can hide. Furthermore, the enormous complexity of large systems like communication networks means that even tiny glitches can cascade into catastrophic events. And we see this quite a lot as well when you look at cell phone manufacturers, where they will tell you that um, this software update, if there's going to be any software update, this software update is only relevant to certain models that they would have made, and usually is the latest models up to a certain limit. The older versions, they are no longer compatible when it comes to these software updates as well, because if you are trying to update, that's why you see that certain, like for example, if you look at iPhone as well, they will tell you that this software update is only relevant from a certain, maybe let's say from iPhone, maybe let's say 9 or 8 going onwards, which means that if you have an iPhone 5, you are no longer going to be able to you are no longer going to be able to the update is not going to be accepted on your phone as well. Why is that? Because they know that if you are going to put the latest updates on, for example, on an iPhone 5, there's a lot of loopholes that are going to be created as well, and the phone is not going to be able to work as planned. Reason being, it also creates those loopholes where security wise they might other people can end up exploiting those loopholes as well. So which means as the organization grow, the question now becomes, as the organization grow, should we continue fixing the old, the current system, or should we do away with the system and create a completely new system as well? And we also see this quite a lot when it comes to government systems, where with government systems, some of the government systems that they use, they are in most African countries, they are using systems that were built pre-independence. And these systems that were built pre-independence as well, they were not necessarily capacitated or meant to service the whole population efficiently within within a particular country as well, taking into account population growth as well. And because of this, you see that many governments, they are now trying to fix and creating so many layers of so many patches, trying to fix this, trying to fix that as well, without necessarily trying to create a completely new system that is meant to actually service and meet the current conditions that are being experienced as well. And because of this, you find that most of these government systems, they carry a lot of loopholes, and a lot of these loopholes, they are also taken advantage of by different parties who also see an opportunity out of it as well. We have seen this quite a lot when you look at the issue of the immigration systems, or the issue of government systems, where, for example, you look at the tendering system, and also how governments are generally run as well. Even when you look at how companies like Eskom are being run as well. Some of the issues that you see is mainly because they are building on top of legacy systems, which they should be doing away with, and creating a completely new system that is adaptable to the current conditions as well. So which means as the population grows, is what the government is servicing grow as well. There's a growth in complexity, and there's a growth in complexity as well. We see that there's a lot of loopholes that are also being created, and the same applies with an organization as well. With an organization, you start your business, and when you start your business, you are just servicing your local community, but you see that there's demand of your goods and services across the provinces. Yes, you were running this business as a one-man show. You are running this business as a one-man show. You see that there's an increase in demand of your goods across provinces. And also because your product or service is being liked so much, you also have to export some of your products and services as well. So what do we see? Running this business as a one-man show is no longer it's creating a lot of loopholes within your system where you are going to now end up forgetting this accounting that you need to take into account. You are going to end up forgetting to complete a particular order when you're supposed to do it on time as well, because your organization is growing. What as the organization is growing, there's also a growth in what complexity of the organization. That's why you see that when we looked at Unit 1.6, one of the points that we looked at when you look at the acronym VUCA as well, we say that as an organization increases in complexity, what do we need? We need to make sure that we also ensure that we create different functions within the organization to meet those unique conditions. That's why you see that they also say as the complexity increases as well, we need to make sure that we are now going to be having the accounting department, the financing department, or the manufacturing department, or the different departments which are specializing to meet the unique conditions that are coming from the different variables. And that's how you are able to mitigate issues of complexity as well. Now, we look at the heading inevitability of disaster. And here they say, in fact, catastrophic events are almost guaranteed to occur in many complex systems, much like big earthquakes, are bound to happen. Indeed, the statistic of events in man-made systems is starting to closely resemble that of destructive natural phenomena. Consider the massive blackout that occurred in August 14, 2003, when a power line tripped somewhere in the northeastern Ohio. That tiny accident triggered a series of cascading failures that propagated throughout the sprawling, complex, interconnected North American power grid, costing the U.S. between $4 billion and $6 billion, according to the U.S. Department of Energy. John Doyle, a mathematician at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, examined data from the incident and found that the blackout was no statistical anomaly. It was bound to happen, even overdue. Although the DOE might disagree with the assessment, the fact is that regulators and policymakers are currently ill-equipped to design and administer such complex systems. So the August 2003 blackout was an accident. In many other cases, malicious intent is the culprit, and that is one of the most frightening thoughts of all. Any sufficiently complex system will inevitably have internal weakness or loopholes, some of which are bound to be uncovered and exploited. Myriad threats abound, from international terrorists to high school hackers. So it's not it's when are you going to get hacked? So says Kevin Mitnick, the notorious hacker who served 5 years in federal prison for high-profile corporate break-ins. According to him, computer systems are complex. There will always be ways to break in. So the possibilities of mischief are endless. So people who manipulate search engines results by creating bunches of fake links, competitors that leech off a company's intellectual property by taking advantage of a badly written patent, ordinary air travelers who save money by gaming overly complicated frequent flyer programs. So the result is often an arms race between defender and attacker. As companies add increasingly sophisticated firewalls to protect their computer networks, for instance, hackers developed more ingenious ways to breach those systems. So now the question becomes, so what really causes failures? And here they say, the internal weaknesses of a system tend to reveal themselves in times of external turbulence and stress. In other words, the cracks might not become apparent until something unusual occurs on the outside, and that is when it is probably too late. But an external trigger must not be confused with a cause of or be blamed for a catastrophic event. The Kobe earthquake and the ensuing large fluctuations in the Asian financial markets did not cause the fall of bearings. One too many bookings on ComAir did not cause the meltdown of the airline's information systems. And a line tripping in Ohio did not cause the blackout of August 2003. These external triggers merely served to highlight the existence of internal flaws, which deserve the true blame for those catastrophes. When exposed, the internal weaknesses sometimes become obvious in retrospect, but that's not always the case. For example, whereas the collapse of bearings can be traced to a single trader in a dysfunctional culture, the structural weakness of the United States power grid are still poorly understood. So when the potential consequences of catastrophic companies are catastrophic, companies must also take into account events that are unlikely to occur. And in the case of malicious attacks, disasters might be even more likely to occur than predicted by random failure theory because such calculations do not factor in intent. So when malicious intent is present, an attacker needs only one vulnerability to wreak havoc. So which means they are saying as the organizations grow more and more complex as well, you should always be on the lookout for those internal flaws that are also going to end up materializing and growing bigger and bigger as the organization becomes what? More and more complex as well. So the next heading is, so we look at forestalling uh, fatal flaws. And yet they say, so this raises the question, without the benefit of perfect foresight, how can businesses uncover and forestall the fatal flaws lurking within their organizations? That complexity is a source of inevitable risk, is not a new idea. Over 20 years ago, sociologist and organizational theorist Charles Perrow analyzed the near catastrophic events at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant and developed his normal accident theory. The idea that as the complexity and interconnectedness of systems increase, major accidents become inevitable and thus, in a sense, normal. But what new are the practical tools sets that have been developed to help companies better manage the risk of complex systems? So there are 3 complementary strategies for mitigating risk. 1, assess the risk to make better informed decisions, such as purchasing an insurance policy to cover the risk. And 2, spot vulnerabilities and fix them before catastrophic events occur. And 3, design out weaknesses through resilience. So these ideas have been around for years, but researchers have had to reinvent them in the context of extremely complex, interconnected, cascade-prone system. So as such, 3 approaches are relevant not only to engineers and software developers, but also to anyone writing complicated contracts, designing complex products, and figuring out how parts of the large corporation should work together and so on. So which means as the organization becomes complex, we should expect that there's also we should also expect that there's also going to be those loopholes that are going to be created within an organization as well. So which means to mitigate this, it means that one, it's very ideal to have an insurance policy to mitigate these risks as well. And even over and above this as well, apart from a commercial insurance policy that one can have, which we are going to cover inside Unit 15, we also need to look at what business interruption insurance as well, which is covered in Unit 20 as well. Then they also say we should also, on an ongoing basis, we should be able to spot and look out for vulnerabilities and fix them before they become what? Catastrophic events. And this is where the review, the monitoring and review comes in when it comes to the risk management function. And then they also say we should also be able to design out weaknesses through resilience, to say how do we create resilience now that we've for example we've done a scenario analysis and we have seen these potential loopholes as well. How do we ensure that we're able to create resilience if these risk events also materializes as well? And that's one of the issues that we also need to take into account there, where we are saying if there's going to be a loss event, and we're going to look at it as the start unit develop as start unit 2 develops as well, you will see that they are also going to be emphasizing on as we spot all these issues as well. And for example, we do a scenario analysis, right? How do we ensure that we're also going to be able to position ourselves not only to mitigate these loss events, but also create a competitive advantage to the organization? So as the organization becomes complex, yes, there's going to be those patches where there's going to be those vulnerabilities as well. And remember, they say in most cases, some of these vulnerabilities, they are going to be made bigger when an external event actually comes in and affects the organization as well from a macroeconomic perspective. So now, if we are going to be on an ongoing basis where if we're going to be spotting these vulnerabilities and designing a system to actually be creating resilience within the organization as well, the main thing that they're trying to point out there is that, for example, we can do a scenario analysis and then we prepare ourselves to say, if this external event happens as well, how do we ensure that we're able to create resilience within the organization? But the resilience here is not only to mitigate these risk events when they happen. The question becomes, how do we also create a competitive advantage to the organization as these loss events do materialize as well? And that's very, very important. Why are we talking about this? Because remember, when you look at risk financing, whatever we do, we should always ask the question, what is the goal of the firm? The goal of the firm is to maximize shareholders' wealth. So if the goal of the firm is to maximize shareholders' wealth, it means in all the activities that we are going to be pursuing for the organization, the goal ultimately should be to maximize shareholders' wealth. So which means if we are able to mitigate these loss events when they happen as well, and we are able to create a competitive advantage to the organization, the creation of the competitive advantage of the organization also enables us to what? Maximize shareholders' wealth in the face of these loss events happening as well. And that's why you see that it is, especially when we go back to the VUCA acronym, when we go back to the wicked problems that the management is facing as well, how do we ensure that we're able to create a competitive advantage and also maximize shareholders' wealth in the process? Which means it will be very important and interesting if you go back to the most recent events that have been happening. We look at the war between the US and Israel and Iran as well. We see exactly. So, as an organization, have you been preparing yourself for such an event happening as well? When you look at what happened over the past few years as well, we look at the COVID-19 pandemic as well, you will see that the organizations that were able to be adaptive enough to create, to more than mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 event as well, they've been able to create a competitive advantage for the organization and also maximize shareholders' wealth in the process. There's a lot of, and if you look at these external events as well, they they became a make or break event for some of, or for many organizations as well. So the question becomes, how do we mitigate, but over and above mitigating these potential failures as well, how do we ensure that we're able to maximize shareholders' wealth by creating a competitive advantage in the face of these loss events as well? So are we on the same page when it comes to the main points that we're expected to address when it comes to uh, uh, Study Unit 2.2? Any questions? So you see that looking at
Linus.
yes, yeah.
Hi, sorry, I did ask a question on the chat, mainly on that how complexity breeds fragility section. Has that ever been part of an exam question paper before?
How they have brought this issue of complexity, when they bring this issue of complexity, you see that they, in historically, the lecturer has brought it in being linked to other concepts as well. So you see that this explanation that in the discussion that have been given here, if you've looked at this particular article, uh, in particular, you see that it's not necessarily expected that you be asked this question individually. You see that when you look at the way that we are looked at this article, they were referring us to what was covered in Study Unit 1, and is all in some to some extent it's also referring us to what was covered in Unit 2.1 as well. Because remember, it's talking about the issues of complexity, and the concept of complexity was covered in Unit 1.6, and also is very much related to what was covered in Unit 2.1 when you look at the issues of wicked problems as well. So you're not necessarily expecting it to be a concept that is covered on it as on its own, but what was discussed here, it's reinforcing the concepts that have been covered in the previous study units as well. So you need to understand, because how you need to look at this particular study unit is that you need to look at it from a perspective where it's giving you a broader understanding of the concepts that have been covered in the previous study unit, so that you have a better understanding of those concepts as well. And the concept that they're talking about here is the concept of complexity. And we know that complexity was covered in Unit 1.6. It was also covered in Unit 2.1 when you look at the issue of wicked problems as well. So that's how you should look at it, not necessarily from it being an individual question, but as something, as a concept that is being reinforced from previous discussions in the other study units as well. So if it comes in the exam, it's something that I would say, take note of it. But if it comes in the exam, probably if it comes in the exam, we are discussing the issues of complexity, it means that they will probably give you a case study, and then they ask you what are the risk management failures that you can identify from there, and maybe they can ask you to say, from this, how did complexity breeds fragility for this particular organization? And you should be able to explain based on the information that has been given in the case study as well. So if it comes in the exam, most probably they'll have to give you a case study first, and then based on that case study, you discuss the issues of complexity and how those issues led to failures. And potentially they can also link it to Unit 1.5, where they say what are the risk management failures that has been identified from this particular case study as well. Are there any other questions? All right. Can we take a 10 minutes break until 9:50? Can we take a 10 minutes break until 9:50? Then at 9:50, we look at unit 2.3. So can we take a 10 minutes break until 9:50? Then we look at unit 2.3. All right, can we continue? So we are now looking at Unit 2.3. We're now looking at Unit 2.3. And please note, when it comes to your exam, the lecturer likes to be, although there are certain concepts that we know that the lecturer loves to bring in the exam, but every now and again, the lecturer loves to be unpredictable and bring in something they might not necessarily have emphasized on in the previous exams as well. So if you look at your exams um, over the past 2 years, 2026, 2025, even to some extent 2024 as well, especially 2025 and 2026, the lecturer has tried as much as possible to bring in a fresh perspective going into the exam. So which means that that is strategy that you might have employed in the previous years or when you're doing your undergrad, where you just go through past question papers and hope that all the questions are going to be coming in from the past question papers. For RSK4803, it doesn't work that way. The lecturer tries as much as possible to check and examine your understanding of the concepts that have been brought into the exam. So, which means it's very, very important for you to listen to me carefully, especially when we go through the revision period, because there are certain, when you look at the trend, yes, the lecturer tries to bring in new questions, but when we go through revision, we also analyze the trend that the lecturer, to some extent, follows as well. And there are certain concepts that we usually emphasize to say, please have a look at this concept or have a look at that concept, because there's a reason why we ask you to do that, because we look at the trend that the lecturer follows. And in looking at those trends as well, there are certain concepts that we see as highly likely to be brought when you look at how the lecturer asks or examines the questions in the exam as well. So don't just think that if you go through past question papers without understanding the concept, you will be fine going to the exam. Yes, there are some questions in the exam where the lecturer will ask you, maybe they just copy and paste or they ask it a little bit differently from a question that they've asked previously, but they always try to bring in something fresh into the exam as well. So you must make sure that whatever we're going through during the period where we're going through these different sections as well, please make sure that you understand the application. That's why we see that we try as much as possible to show you how these different study units are linking to each other, so that if you understand how these different study units are linking to each other, if ever a question is going to be asked in the exam, it's going to be easy for you to demonstrate understanding of the concept, because that's the most important thing that the lecturer tries to emphasize on. When they ask you questions in the exam, they are no, from postgrad perspective, you are now going to be examined on understanding of the concept and application of those concepts as well. So please make sure that you keep that in mind as we go through this. So it's not enough to think that you don't go through the study units and you wait until November or December, and then you can just hope that if you just go through as many past question papers, you're going to be able to pass the exam. When it comes to RSK4803, it's a very bad strategy. You are most likely going to struggle as well. So it's very, very important that even if you miss one class, and you are not able to attend one online class, right? Try as much as possible to make sure that you catch up on the video. Because if we have a class today, our turnaround time and obligation is that by Monday, end of day, following the class, we would have uploaded that video and would have made an announcement to say the video is available, so that you have a 2-week cycle to make sure that you are able to catch up on that video before the next online class as well. So it's very, very important that you keep that in mind. So please, it's a very big strategy to think that you are going to wait until October, November to start catching up on a few chapters and then do as many past question papers as possible and hope to pass the exam. You are going to struggle and you're going to feel very overwhelmed with your exam period as well. So I would always recommend that try as much as possible to make sure that any class that you miss, you watch the video of that class. If you do that, by the time we get to October, November, you are not going to feel very overwhelmed because you'd be having an understanding of all these different concepts as well. And remember, with the videos that were on your user account as well, even if you feel like, I'm forgetting this other concept, the video is always going to be there and you're able to refer to it. You watch that video and you're able to review and also understand as well. If there's anything that you are struggling with as we go through the chapters as well, if there's anything that you're struggling with, I'm always available to address any questions that you might have as well. So please take note of that. And also, when you send me a question, give me at least a 24-hour turnaround time to answer your question, because sometimes I'm on the road, I'm not able to answer immediately, but I'll always make sure that I answer any queries that you might have sent through as well. So now, looking at Study Unit 2.3, Study Unit 2.3, we looking at the heading strategic thinking at the top. So we're looking at the heading strategic thinking at the top. Now, where this heading comes in, being very important, is that, remember we said that the top management is the one that is going to be looking at, to say, strategically, based on our risk appetite of the organization, how much risk exposure are we willing to take as well? So which means that there is a lot of decision making that the board and top management are going to have to make. And which means now, so what type of mindset do they need to have for them to make these decisions as well, especially in a VUCA world where we are saying that we are constantly being bombarded by information coming in because we're living in a global community. Also, we also need to acknowledge that we're having a situation where we are now, the board and top management, even risk managers as well, they are going to be making decisions in a world where they are going to be facing wicked problems as well. So how do we now make sure that whoever is our decision makers as well, how do we ensure that they're able to look at what and think strategically? Now, under this section, they say what we need to make sure that we take note of from this particular section is that we should be able to answer the following self-assessment questions. What was the purpose of the research? Discuss what strategic thinking is not. Discuss the contributing experiences to develop a person's ability to think strategically, and discuss the practice of rational thinking as well. So those are the things that we need to make sure that at the end of, after we've gone through this particular article, we are able to answer these questions as well. Now, when you look at Unit 2.3, with the heading strategic thinking at the top, they say strategic thinking is generally considered important to a company's performance. Indeed, some have advocated for companies to develop the strategic thinking of their executives as a core competency, but how exactly should organizations accomplish this? Past studies on the subject have been limited, typically focusing on singular teaching methods, experiences, or planning processes. So as such, the research has yielded little insight into the broader picture of how individuals tend to acquire expertise in strategic thinking. What type of work experiences, for example, are more important than others, and do they need to follow any specific chronology? So to answer these and other questions, I conducted a study that identified executives who are considered the top strategic thinkers in their industry. The study then investigated the totality of experiences, that is educational, job-related, and others, that contributed to high ability of those individuals. In addition, the research investigated the different ways in which executives acquired their expertise in strategic thinking, a process that typically took more than a decade. The data showed that strategic thinking arises from 10 specific types of experiences, and we're going to look at them. And here they say, moreover, executives appear to gain their expertise in strategic thinking through one of three developmental patterns as well. And we're going to look at those, looking at the developmental patterns as well. And in this case, we're going to start off by defining what strategic thinking is. And here they say, according to Henry Mintzberg, the management guru, many practitioners and theorists have wrongly assumed that strategic planning, strategic thinking, and strategy making are all synonymous, at least in best practice. So to avoid any confusion, my study used the following definition. Strategic thinking is a distinctive management activity whose purpose is to discover novel imaginative strategies that can rewrite the rules of the competitive game and to envision potential future significantly different from the present. Furthermore, strategic thinking was specified as being conceptual, systems-oriented, directional, and opportunistic. Then they also give us the 10 contributing experiences for one to be able to think strategically. And when you look at the 10 contributing experiences as well, they do summarize them here. When you look at the level of interaction and the experience as well. And when you look at the 10 contributing experiences, they also give them they also categorize them according to the level of interaction, where they say, if from a personal interaction perspective, the experiences that you're gaining is coming from the family or upbringing or education or general work experience or coming from becoming a CEO. Then when you look at interpersonal level of interaction, the experience is coming from being mentored and being challenged by a key colleague. And from an organizational level of interaction, it's coming from monitoring results or benchmarks, doing strategic planning, and spearheading a major growth initiative. And from an external level of interaction, it's coming from dealing with a threat to an organizational survival or from vicarious experiences as well. And now we're going to look at these experiences individually to see exactly what are these experiences as well and how do they contribute to someone being able to think strategically as well. The reason why this section is emphasizing on decision makers or the top management being having the ability to think strategically is mainly because you don't want your top management to get bogged down in operational issues, because if they get too bogged down in operational issues, they are not able to have a bird's eye view of exactly where is our organization and what is it that we're trying to achieve for our organization as well. So which means you are now going to be having a situation where your organization is moving without having a strategic goal to say, over the next 5 years, over the next 2 years, over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years, where do we want our organization to be? So which means in that case, we now try to see exactly those people who are supposed to be having the responsibilities to think strategically for the organization. What are the experiences ideally that you should be looking out for or developing on them to ensure that they have what they need to be able to think strategically as well? So here they say that when you look at the 10 contributing experiences, they say the study identified 10 experiences that contributed to the development of a person's ability to think strategically. And those experiences represent 4 levels of interaction: personal, interpersonal, organizational, and external. Now, looking at those experiences individually, when you look at family or upbringing, or family upbringing or education, they say family upbringing and education are grouped together because the study participants discuss them interchangeably. These 2 types of experiences typically occurred simultaneously, reinforcing one another. One aspect noted was the value of exploring different perspectives, for example, through travel and exposure to different cultures, as well as through debate training and practice of Socratic method. Then they also look at general work experience, and here they say the participants cited experience as in a variety of organizational types and locations, which provided exposure to numerous strategic issues and familiarity with a breadth of strategy. Then we also look at the experience of one becoming a CEO, and here they say this experience is somewhat paradoxical. Many boards want individuals who already have expertise in strategic thinking in their as their CEOs. But many of the study participants cited becoming a CEO as important to the development of their strategic thinking because what with that promotion, they gained access to important information, which enabled a big picture view of their business. Because remember, the CEO is now able to have a bird's eye view of their business because they are also being fed information coming from the different departments as well. Because remember, the different departments and the different functions of the organizations are reporting to the organization. So which means that all that information enables them to think strategically because they have what? They are being fed with information from the different departments as well. Then another contributing factor is being mentored. And yet they say many executives have mentors, but not all mentors help others to develop their strategic thinking. Then they also look at by being challenged by a key colleague, and here they say key colleagues played an important role in challenging the thinking of the executives, which means that they are also being made aware of other variables as well, which means that when they now interact with their colleagues as well, they're also being made aware of other variables that they probably might not would have considered, and that allows them to think strategically as well. Then you look at monitoring results and benchmarking, and then they say the participants cited the importance of their involvement in monitoring the operational and market performance of their organization. Then they also look at doing strategic planning, and then they say the development of strategic thinking ability is enhanced by participation in strategic planning processes with three characteristics. The first is having planning sessions with management teams on a regular basis, often monthly or quarterly. The second is preparation of these sessions, such as the required reading of materials that help focus people's thinking and provides a sense of the meeting's purpose. And the third is the formal output of the planning process, often an overall plan followed by business unit goals or tactical plans as well. Remember, tactical plans now is we're now saying from a short-term perspective, these are the tactical plans that we need to now make sure that we are able to adapt to the changing environment, but at the same time, making sure that these tactical plans are in line with our strategic plans as well. Then they also look at spearheading a major growth initiative. And here they say these projects must involve significant complexity, be both capital and labor intensive, and require at least a year to complete. So which means the more one is able to involve themselves and in or being able to head a major growth initiative or a major initiative within a particular organization as well, allows them to see a bird's eye view of that particular initiative because they're taking responsibilities of the different variables that are affecting that particular initiative as well. And that also allows them to think what? Strategically. Then they also say dealing with a threat to organizational survival. And they say the types of threats that most contribute to the development of strategic thinking are those that involve attempts at control by another entity, which occur repeatedly and that could have a severe impact on the executive's organization. So such experiences typically force a major rethinking of the issues that strike at the core of the individuals involved and substantially sharpening their focus as well. Then the last one is vicarious experiences. And here they say this category includes interactions with others in similar roles, with frequency of contact being an important factor. That's why you see that in most cases, you see that the CEO ends up interacting with other CEOs of other organizations as well, and then they exchange ideas, maybe over lunch, or maybe they all go play tennis together, or maybe they play golf together, right? All these are vicarious experiences that enables them to get ideas from other people on their level as well. And this also enables them to what? To think strategically. So is there any question regarding all these different experiences that contributes to one being able to think strategically? Any questions? Now, under self-assessment, they also say discuss the practice of rational planning. So they also say discuss the practice of rational planning, right? Now, remember they say there are three patterns that they all look at. The first pattern is where you look at the development of understanding, and the second one, they look at the practice of rational planning. So which means under self-assessment they ask us to, most importantly, of those three strategies, they ask us to discuss the practice of rational planning, which is this one. So which means this is the one that we're going to focus more on, which is the second pattern. So which allows one to think strategically. And yet they say, when you look at the practice of rational planning, they say, in this developmental pattern, expertise in strategic thinking is the result of the executive continually asking the same three questions. And the three questions in this case are the three ovals. And the three questions are, where are we going, or what is the vision of the organization? And the second question is, how are we getting there, which looks at the strategies for you to get where you want to go. And the third one is execution efficient, which means are we efficiently implementing the strategies that we have identified to ensure that we are able to get where we want to go as well. So here they say the three ovals, which are, where are we going, how are we getting there, and are we executing efficiently? So the arrows denote the flow of knowledge from the various experiences, which is the small ovals, to the three questions. Note that an experience can provide value to more than one of the questions. So this figure is a reproduction of the actual map created during interactions with one executive in the study who best exemplified this particular pattern of development. So which means when you look at this, you are typically saying that when you look at the vision of where you want the organization to go as well, you are looking typically at the question of data monitoring, question of legacy, benchmark, time use. You are looking at the dialogue with the different with the team as well. You are looking at past success models, the sense of ownership, general business knowledge, community views, and problems or complaints, and also looking at the desired metrics as well. And this now looks at, from there, we also need to ask ourselves to say, how are we getting there? So which means that when you're now looking at the strategies that you need to implement to get there as well, you are now going to look at the best practices within your industry. And here they say, you look at the boss who are being mentors to the different subordinates as well. And this looks at logical evaluation of the alternatives so that they are able to logically evaluate the different alternatives that are there as well. So which means that the mentorship program enables one to be able to evaluate the different um, 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 the different alternatives that are there with the help of the person who's the superior to them as well. And then we'll also look at, to address this as well, you need to be having someone who's a methodical thinker And you also need to be having a beta group. And remember, when you talk about beta groups, we're saying it's a collection of current and prospective customers that will test a product or services for usability and functionality. And we usually find this quite a lot when you look at the research and development phase when a product is being developed as well before it is made online. Then you also look at the after the fact critique, and also you look at how do we now look at the potential mistakes and how do we learn from these mistakes as well. Then from there, we are now going to say, so from the strategies that we have now developed as well, how are we able to ensure that we're able to execute these strategies efficiently? So which means you are looking at the business, the general business knowledge standards, and you're also looking at ensuring that the parties involved are able to think strategically, and you're also looking at the beta groups as well, because the feedback that you would have gotten for the beta groups enables you to see exactly where the loopholes are and how do you close those particular loopholes as well. And then you also look at the after the fact critique, where you're also getting that information as well, so that you're able to ensure that if there's any loopholes that are there, and if there's any inefficiencies that are there, how do you make sure that you're also able to close up these inefficiencies? So which means all these are the best practices that you find as well in ensuring that one is able to think strategically by trying to answer these three questions. And in answering these three questions as well, you're able to now develop a strategic plan. And even when you look at the strategic planning as well, you're also able to have a tactical plan that you're able to have as well, to say in the response to the short-term movements in different risk variables that are there as well, how do we respond to these different risk variables? At the same time, making sure that whatever our response is also going to be able to think, to be able to address our strategic goals, which is also the overall vision of the organization. So that's basically what they are looking at there as well. So looking at these, remember, when you look at the second pattern, where they explain the second pattern there. So remember, the second pattern is basically what they're explaining on the information there. So which means when you look at the second pattern, they are basically looking at this pattern where they're saying, how do we ensure that we have the best, how do we make sure that we're able to follow the best practice of rational planning? So which means the best practice of rational planning tries as much as possible to answer these three questions. And when you're answering these three questions, you are moving to ensure that whatever your strategic plan that you have, how is it able to address the short-term plans or strategic tactical planning as well, so that whatever tactical plan that we have is also able to address and be in line with the strategic plans that we also have as well. So that's how we would address when it comes to discuss the best practice of rational planning. So which means when you're discussing the best practice of rational planning, the most important thing is that you are trying to answer these three questions. So which means whatever information that they can give you, whether it's a case study as well, it means that in answering these three questions as well, you're now going to be looking at the different points that you're going to be using there relevant to that particular case study in answering all these three questions. And ideally, if it comes in the exam, that's how you would address this particular question. Is there any questions regarding this section? Section 2.4 is based on the notes that the lecturer shared in the study guide. So section 2.4 is based on the notes that the lecturer made in the study guide as well. So there's no particular article that we have to look at for unit 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. We have to go through the notes that the lecturer has created there. So you will see that in these notes, the lecturer says on section 2.4 tries to look at integrating risk into strategic planning. So remember, we see in section 2.3 to say, so how do we ensure that whoever is the top management of the organization as well, how do we ensure that they have these characteristics that they need, or they have these experiences, and they are able to have these experiences, which enables them to think strategically. So now the question becomes, so how do we now look at risk management from a strategic planning perspective? And here the lecturer says, the concept of strategic planning management is not new. Organizations are constantly assessing the risk they face and taking steps to adjust to changing circumstances. So the causes of change are infinite, such as mergers and acquisition, the selling or purchasing of new assets, taking on or reducing debt, or increasing or reducing their workforce, or changes in legislation. So organizations, however, quite often struggle to deal well with strategic risks. This may also arise because many leaders struggle to know how to engage in genuine strategic thinking. They find themselves dealing with risk registers full of operational risks. So this becomes very frustrating for executive leaders and for governing bodies who struggle to find, understand, and manage the strategic risks to the organization's long-term success. So it is possible to lift the risk conversation to a strategic level by looking for risks to an organization's purpose rather than to its objectives and what is it aiming to do. By first creating a shared purpose and then testing for risk to that purpose, a risk conversation that was operational can be elevated to a strategic level. So a strategic conversation about risk is also created when an organizational development focus is taken. This is for two reasons. First, in the long term, sustainable success can only be driven by capability, and because of this, responses to strategic risks almost invariably include steps to adapt or develop capability to better match future needs. And second, capability development works inherently focused on the long term since it takes time for new attitudes to develop and for individuals and systems to be able to perform at a new level. So it is strategic work, and its purpose is always to reduce the risk of failure as well. So when you look at this particular section, what the lecturer is trying to emphasize here is that when you look at strategic thinking, we are saying that we need to remember we're saying that from we need to move away from risk being approached from a checklist perspective, where we're saying that you are looking at risk operating in silo, where, for example, as I've highlighted before as well, before we pursue anything, we just do a checklist and we do away with it, and then we focus on everything else, other than now having a risk. Now we're saying that we want the risk management function to be integrated with all the other functions, which means that risk management should be treated as an ongoing activity, not necessarily a checklist activity before we start our whatever activities that we're having or operations that we have as well. And because of this, it means that we need to, for one, to be able to think strategically and to plan strategically as well. It means that this is the reason why we need enterprise risk management, which we are going to be, remember, we're saying that we're building on towards enterprise risk management. Reason being, we are saying for one to be able to think strategically, it means that from a risk management perspective, we need enterprise risk management where we are looking at managing risk from the organizational perspective and not necessarily looking at risk operating in silo as well. So that's basically what the lecturer is trying to emphasize here, is that since we're looking at it from an enterprise risk management where risk is being linked with the other functions of the organization as well, it also means that the risk management function should also be linked to the strategic planning of the organization, because from the strategic planning of the organization, we are also going to ensure that whatever we are looking at from a strategic perspective is also going to be falling within the risk limits, which means also whatever activities that we have there, whatever tactical planning that we do, which is linked onto the strategic planning of the organization as well. How do we manage risk to ensure that our risk is also whatever we're doing from a short-term perspective or tactical plan perspective as well to respond to the change in the organization, that or in the variables or change in the market that we're operating in as well. It means that how do we ensure that that response is also going to be in line with what the strategies of the the long-term strategy of the organization as well. And because of this, it's emphasizing, unit 2.4 is emphasizing the point where we are saying that at the end of the day, we need to now look at risk management from an organizational perspective or from an enterprise perspective, not in silo, hence enterprise risk management. So are we on the same page on what we need to take note of from unit 2.4? Any questions? Unit 2.5 looks at developing a strategic risk management culture. So which means, remember we said that we need to look at enterprise risk management, where we are looking at risk management from the organizational perspective. So which means that if it's going to be from an organizational perspective, it also means that we need to have a single risk management culture where everyone understands the risk management culture within the organization, which means the risk management is not only going to be for the risk management department, it's going to be integrated with any other activities of the organization, whether it's the manufacturing activities, or even if it's the security guard sitting by the front desk, or even if it's going to be the person who's cleaning the building that the organization is operating in as well. They also need to understand the risk management culture of the organization, because that way it means that you are able to manage the risk management. Everyone top down is able to be in line in understanding the risk management culture of the organization as well. So that's basically what they're trying to explain in 2.5. So here they say, or the lecturer says, to implement strategic risk management successfully, the organization needs to have a proper risk management culture. A strategic risk management culture and mindset focus on examining how well a business strategy will perform under different scenarios and events. So the requirements to establish a risk management culture are as follows. Support by top management through word and action of risk management is a high priority. Oversight responsibility needs to be communicated to all staff. Organizational lines of responsibility and authority need to be established. A cross-functional view of risk is needed to break down organizational and functional barriers. The enterprise-wide nature of risk management must be considered, taking into account management styles and skill requirements. Measurement of risk and exposure to an enterprise-wide basis is a key component of effective risk management, and a clear set of corporate objectives and strategies, which includes an acceptable approach towards risk management, should be established, and the gains from managing risk should be clear and measurable. And financial and non-financial incentives must be aligned with the risk management objective, and training and support for risk management must be provided. Remuneration of staff must be market related. Risk managers should be regarded as a vulnerable resource which can provide independent, objective input onto matters arising from business strategies. Risk management is not a once-off function. A continuous management function and emphasis of risk management must be proactive to prevent losses and risk events from occurring. So total involvement of all employees in risk management. So upward reporting process with the aim of disclosure or decision required. Downward communication on risk management decisions. Risk owners, which is the line of business managers, are regarded as the risk owners, and having a common risk language, which means everyone should understand exactly from a risk management perspective, everyone should be involved in the risk management of the organization. For example, if the door is not locked, the cleaner must not say, this is the responsibility of the security guard. So if the door was accidentally not locked, they're just going to walk away. So which means everyone needs to have a common risk culture and understand exactly the risk management culture of the organization, which means that even if the sweeper sees that the door is not locked and they see that there's no one, the door was accidentally left not locked as well, they should also understand the risk management culture and take initiative to also lock the door as well and have the proper communication so that everyone is aware that the door was not locked. So which means, as a simple example, we're basically saying that from a risk management perspective, everyone should be involved in the risk management of the organization. So whoever is within the organization should be involved. And if they're involved there, this is how the organization ends up having what? A common risk management culture for the organization as well. So are we on the same page when it comes to the risk management culture? Any questions? Section 2.6 looks at the strategic risk assessment process. And here they say, a strategic risk review differs from a conventional bottom-up approach and also differs from a typical strategic risk work carried out directly by executive teams or by boards of directors. So risks are assessed to purpose rather than to objectives. The use of risk maps rather than risk registers opens the conversation even further and allows for a level of interaction and challenge that is not possible when dealing with text-based risk descriptions. Strategic external and internal scenarios are easily incorporated into the risk conversation through the risk maps. And offline systemic risk analysis methods are applied to help leaders understand the effects of risk interrelationships and shared root causes. However, the most powerful drivers are often subtle, complex, and hidden, and are seldom identified using a standard risk analysis method as well. And please note that we're going to look at risk maps as well as scenario planning as well. We're going to look at it in detail in the coming sections as well. Then they also say the end of a systemic strategic risk review is the identification and prioritization of response strategies for a risk as a whole, rather than a focus on managing individual risks. So this offers many advantages from a strategic perspective since it optimizes risk management efforts for the organization as a whole. Then systemic risk is likely to identify risks related to capability, including those risks driven by internal culture and the way in which leaders operate. The advantages of taking systemic approach to strategic risk include a strategic risk conversation is easily created based upon a focus on achieving purpose rather than objectives. So the understanding achieved is greatly enhanced by using risk maps for discussion, challenge, and review. So it is likely to find and to deal with subtle hidden sources of risk that have previously not been dealt with well as well. So which means they also say the influence of risk interrelationships and shared risk sources are incorporated, and risk responses are strategic rather than operational and deal with root causes and drivers of risk as a whole rather than seeking to fix one risk at a time. So a strategic risk review can be tailored to be a quick once-off conversation at the executive team or board level, or to be an exhaustive process based upon raw data and analysis as well. So which means when you go back to this as well, they're basically saying that when you look at strategic risk assessment process as well, that they give us and the advantages to that as well, the main thing there is that the strategic risk assessment process enables us to look at risk management not only on a macro perspective and not only on a short-term basis or from an operational perspective, but we're able to look at risk management from a what? Enterprise level as well. So which means if we're able to look at risk management from an enterprise level, it means that we are able to answer the vision of the organization, which is the purpose, rather than what looking at objectives which are more focused on an operational perspective as well. So which means if you're able to answer the questions or address the issues on an enterprise-wide level, it basically means that we are able to address and make sure that whatever our risk management activities are, they are also in line with the strategic goals of the organization as well. So that's basically what they are covering in Unit 2.6. Is there any question on what we have covered in Unit 2.6? Any questions? All right, so let's end here today. Please note that our next class is in 2 weeks' time. Our next class is in 2 weeks' time. And our next class is on the Our next class is going to be on the 25th of April. It's in 2 weeks' time. Please note that in the coming week, for those students who have registered, I'm going to be starting to now address the issues of the assignments as well. So I'm going to be addressing to say for us quiz number one, I'm going to start off with quiz number one, and I'll also discuss with you exactly what the strategy is in answering the questions from quiz number one as well. I'm going to do that going into the coming week. So please expect a communication so that we by end of April, we are done looking at quiz number one, which means that by the time we get to the due date, which is going to be sometime in May as well, we would have long covered quiz number one as well. So from next week, during the course of the week, expect me to start communicating with you regarding assignment number one, because our obligation is we are going to guide you through going through the study units. We are going to guide you through the assignments, and we're also going to go through with you during the revision period. And please note that our revision period starts from November, December, January, and February when you write your exam. And usually, Rsk4803 is usually one of the first exams to be written if you're doing risk management. It's usually one of the first exams to be written, and it's usually around going towards mid to end of January. So it comes a bit earlier. So please make sure that you don't wait until October, November to start looking at your books. Rather start going through the material now. Don't wait until October, November to start going through your books. And don't think that if you just go through past question papers, you're obviously going to you're going to see those questions being copy and paste in the exam as well. For RSK4803 specifically, the lecturer tries to bring in a fresh question paper. As something of interest, go back, don't answer the questions. Don't worry about the questions for now, because remember, now we are focusing on the articles and going through the study guide, right? That's what we need to do, which forms the foundation of what we need to know. Out of interest, have a look at the Jan-Feb 2026 paper, and then look at the 2025 paper, and look at the 2024 paper as well, especially the 2025 and 2026 papers as well, even the 2024 papers. You will see that when you look at the trend of how the lecturer is asking questions, just looking at and hoping that you go through past question papers and you're going to pass the exam is going to be very difficult for you. Why? The lecturer tries to bring in fresh questions. They try to bring in fresh questions. Yes, there is a tendency of the lecturer to repeat certain concepts, but we're going to look at that in the when we start preparing for the exam. There's a tendency for the lecturer to bring in or to repeat certain concepts, but don't expect exactly the same question. That's what I'm saying. So expect a fresh question, although sometimes they tend to repeat some of the questions, some of the concepts. Expect a fresh question, and because of this, you need to understand the foundation. If you have a proper foundation of understanding of your material in the study units, you will see that the exam will be a lot easier for you. So don't just hope that you are going to wait until October and December, or maybe January, where you're just going to go through and cram as many questions from past question papers as possible and hope that those questions are the ones that are going to be copied and pasted and brought into the exam. It's not like that. If you check the trend of RSK403 questions, if you look at the past question papers, Jan Feb 2026, 2025, 2024, you will see the trend there in those recent papers that the lecturer is avoiding a situation where he just copies and pastes the questions and say, here's your exam. It's not usually like that. It's not, if you look at the trend there, they are trying to do away with that by trying to, as much as possible, check your understanding of the concept as well.
Reno,
Yes,
Reno, yes.
yes,
I'm checking if you have the previous question papers you are referring to, 25,
yes.
24.
We do, but we usually make them available to the students on the diamond package sometime in September. But what I'm trying to emphasize there is that for now, take note that the trend is, don't just expect to do past question papers and think that the lecturer is going to copy and paste this question. Randomly, the lecturer does that, because there are some in every exam. Maybe there might be one or maybe two questions where the lecturer might copy and paste from another past exam paper, but the majority of questions there, it's something that they're trying to bring in as a fresh question, whether it's refreshed or whatever it is, they try to bring it as a fresh question as well. But note that when we look at the revision period, which means that beginning of October, that's when we start opening up the revision material for those students who are on the diamond package. We do open up where you are able to access the past question papers, answers to the past question papers, past assignments, and the answers to the past assignments as well. So we do make that available. And also we have videos going through that material. The videos are there. So which means you have a wide range of database that is available, that even if we don't cover through all the past question papers, but there's a lot of papers that you're able to do on your own, because the videos are there going through that material. The past question papers are there, the answers are there, the past assignments are there, and the answers are there as well. So which means we do have a wide range of material that is available. For now, don't worry much yourself about uh, going through the past question papers. For now, your focus should be, how do I ensure that I go through, if there's any class I miss, I go to the video of that class so that I'm not behind. Because every class that we do, there's always going to be those things, those nuggets that I throw in for you to make sure that whatever you do for the exam, make sure that you are fully understanding the application of these concepts as well. So it's very, very important that you don't miss a class. If you miss a class, make sure that you go to the videos. That's one thing. Make sure that you do your assignments on time. I have so many students who, when we go to the assignments, they completely forget. I share the information, they completely forget to now answer those questions, to do the assignment as well. And then they end up having assignments that they miss. It's very, very important that you make sure that your assignments are up to date and they are down on time. So that even if you are struggling, when we go through the revision period, communicate with me if you're struggling, so that I know exactly how do we now, because there are so many students who, they take all the 5 modules and then they hope that they forget about that. They forget that they're doing risk management. And only in October, November, they start scrambling around trying to go through all those 5 modules, and they become very overwhelmed as well. I would always advise you to communicate with me as we go. If you're feeling overwhelmed on a particular concept, communicate with me as we go, so that when there is time, we make sure that we're able to mitigate those issues on time. Don't wait until January next year, or a few weeks before, which is a few weeks before the exam, or until December to try to address issues that you might have. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, let us know so that we can, because we've been doing this for quite a while. It's more than 10 years now that I've been teaching these modules as well. So you see that with all this experience, there is nothing new under the sun that I don't know. So which means, please, if you're feeling overwhelmed, or there are issues that you're having when it comes to your assignments or going to the material as well, please let us know. There's nothing new that we don't know, and we will always have a way of assisting you as well. So please make sure that you communicate with us. So are there any questions before we end the class?
Renos.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the first time for me joining this class. You provided the link to me yesterday. So I hear you talking about students who are registered. I'm not sure now that I'm part of this class, the information you provide. Am I registered? Well, I'm just confused.
All
And
right.
also
If you have not yet filled the registration form, or
yeah.
if you have not registered, if you have not yet filled the registration form, because remember there are different people from different groups that have been brought to us as well. So make sure that whatever group that you're belonging to, the administrator of that group, you communicate with them, because they're able to now assist you in making sure that you are registered, because there are different groups that have been created by different people that also are conducting, where we conduct classes for them as well. So because of this, whatever group you belong to, if you have not filled in the registration form as well, please communicate with the administrator of your group so that they're able to give you the registration form and you're able to register. Then once you fill in the registration form, we will make sure that we assist you with the registration process. So whoever is the administrator of whatever group you belong to, make sure that you communicate with them, and they will greatly assist you with the registration process as well. Because once you are registered, we make sure that we also help you to create a user account on our website. And on that user account, this is where you're able to access the soft copies of the articles for Rsk4803. If it's 04 and 05, you're able to access the soft copies of the textbooks, which are already, and all this material is already highlighted with a bit of notes on it as well, so that it guides you, so that, especially for Rsk4803, the articles that you go through, we make sure that we highlight them and put a bit of notes on them to guide you on how to maneuver these articles, because some of the material that they cover, the articles are quite a lot. It's a lot of articles that you need to maneuver through as well. So we do try to guide you so that you're able to not spend too much time on things that you're not necessarily expected to know. Because remember, how we highlight the articles is based on the self-assessment questions. So which means each article has to address these self-assessment questions, which means when we prepared these articles as well, we were always going back to the self-assessment question and say, has this question been addressed, or has this question been addressed? Now highlighting all those articles as well. So I would advise you, once you register with us and you create a user account, you're able to access these articles, which are already highlighted with a bit of notes on them. And then all our sessions are recorded, which means even the lessons that we did now, the classes that we did last year, we make them available to you, so that for those students who want to prepare before the class, so that if there's anything that they don't understand, they're able to ask questions in the class. I would prefer that you ask questions in class. So usually as a student, you are equipped to ask questions in class when you, for example, you have gone through the video of the section that is being covered in the class, so that once you've gone through the video, you highlight things that you don't understand, then you ask me. I'm more than willing to explain further. Because remember, this is online classes. It's different from those classes which are physical. With those classes which are physical, you can read from people's facial expressions that here they are lost and here they're fine. But it's very difficult when it comes to online classes as well. So with online classes, it's very difficult to do that. And the only way we're able to judge whether a particular concept has been covered fully is when people ask questions. Because the more questions you ask, the more we explain, and even using more examples so that you understand exactly the points that we're trying to drive through as well. So please, whatever group you belong to, make sure that you you ask the admin there to assist you with the registration process. They will assist you as well. And please ensure that those who are on the groups, which are the trial package groups as well, please note that the trial package is expiring by Monday end of day. So between now and Monday end of day, please make sure that you take steps. If you want to continue receiving our services, please make sure that by Monday end of day, you are fully registered as well. All right. Are there any questions?
So Lerenos, I assume when you're referring to a group that I need to contact the administrator of that particular group, are you referring to the groups that
The
you
WhatsApp.
sent to me? I think
Yes, the
the
WhatsApp
one
group.
that is
Yes, the WhatsApp
expiring
groups.
on
Yes.
Monday.
Yeah,
That
it's
are
the WhatsApp
expiring
group.
on Monday. Okay.
Yeah, it's the WhatsApp groups. Yes. On that WhatsApp groups,
Okay.
you check the adminer, that whoever is the administrator of that WhatsApp group, they will be able to assist you as well.
Okay. No, thank you.
All right. All right. Let's end here today. Please note that our next class is going to be on the 25th. And during the course of the week, next week, we are going to be looking at quiz number 1. And I'm going to be communicating with you on exactly how we're going to be approaching quiz number 1 during the course of the week next week. But remember, we're going to be doing that with those students who are registered, because from Monday onwards, where our trial period will be done, we are now going to be concentrating on those students who would have been registered as well. All right,
Ines,
enjoy
just
the
one question.
Mhm.
I won't be available on the class for the 25th, right? Is it fine for me to have a look at the past videos that you did for starting from unit 2.7?
Yes, you can do that, but make sure that remember, all our sessions are recorded, which means on the class of the 25th, we are going to record it, and we're also going to upload that video as well. So if you go to the video in advance, remember that video is what we did in 2025. Make sure that you do go to the video of what we would have done on the 25th as well, because it's very, very important, because whatever announcements I make in that class as well, they are relevant to what's happening currently as well. So
Okay, cool.
check that, keep that in mind. So whatever we do, make sure that the video of what we are going through on the 25th, you also make sure that you go to that particular video as well. All right.
Ronos,
Yes.
is there a plan to have a face-to-face class, or it's just end like this?
Since the pandemic, we have conducted our classes online. If there's any queries, just let me know on WhatsApp. So since the pandemic, which is 2020, we've done our classes online so that we have a wider reach of students as well. If you have any questions, let me know so that we can address any queries that you might have as well. So just let us know on WhatsApp. All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Sorry, Reynolds. Sorry.
Yes.
All right. I heard you say